Hello, I am Radagast with a Mystic Review Preview. This is on, well, it's getting a little bit late, but it's still the first of the year, so Happy New Year all. And, yeah, Mystic Review Preview 2016-2017. I probably have to put on my glasses because I don't write big enough. Okay, so coming into, I'm going to do like a little jumping around. I'll try to go one to the other, but I guess ending 2016 and going into 2017, we really have the war of the clashing elites, while they clash, of course, with the regular people. And this is a good thing. There definitely are pockets. I guess what's really causing the war is that they see what's going on. The anti-globalization move, the anti-NWO move, has awakened to a critical mass. More and more people are aware of what globalization is, what the New World Order is, and that they're run by a largely psychopathic small group. And I mean this, and when I mean psychopathic, I'm not talking about like the people, you know, like this psychopaths that you find in prison. Although many of these psychopaths certainly do belong in prison. These are the ones who learn to mimic human behavior. They're the penultimate actors. And they mimic the behavior that they're supposed to, given our certain reactions. Generally, one of the ways you can sometimes suss out these types is hitting a few different kinds of humor in a conversation. Psychopaths really do not have a generic or natural sense of humor. They actually don't have much in the way of humans' emotions. That's why they have to learn to mimic the right behaviors so that they don't appear as the predators that they are. I'm not going to make this about psychopaths. Okay, I'm looking at my time because I want to keep this at about 30 minutes. Okay, another thing of 2016, as we're closing down 2016, we see, again, we see the New World Order, the globalists, in a panic. And part of this panic is shutting down on free speech. They have adopted this ridiculous concept of fake news for the people that maybe approach anything that is sensible and based on real facts and strays from the official narrative. The official narrative is really the biggest part of the false world, which many people call the Matrix, but I call the Patrix. One of these days I might do a quick video on the difference and why we'd want to suss them out. But for now, we'll call it Matrix because that is familiar with everybody. And like a case in point, all right, I guess it was a day or two ago, and Styx Hexenhammer did a great coverage on it as it came out about the Russians tried to hack into some little power company in Vermont. And it was such a disingenuous story. Apparently, the Washington Compost has retracted it. And what it was there was a single person's computer, almost like my computer, that was not connected to any of the operating things. It was somebody, I guess they had to be stationed there, so they have a personal computer to get emails and apparently maybe watch porn. Because what was on the single computer wasn't some Russian hacking equipment. It was your typical malware. If you have Malwarebytes or any of the other kinds of scanners that will occasionally show you malware that's been on there from your web browsing, and the less savory, you can get it from anywhere, but the less savory one's browsing is, the more likely you are to pick up some malware. So there was this piece of malware. It's very old malware. It's very primitive malware. And it's really nothing more than a tracker of what you do or to gathering information, or maybe just to screw up your computer a little bit. It had absolutely no capacity to do something. outside of itself other than to affect your computer. And again, I mean, if the average person were to do a scan on their computer, the chances are they'll find at least 1 or 2 pieces of malware. So they took this very common occurrence on anybody's computer, especially if you cruise certain kinds of content that got on this person's computer, and then they tried to turn it into Russians tried to bring down the power grid. That is so out. I mean, that is completely contrived. That is so made up. It has no basis. There is no way. It's not, I mean, it is completely impossible based on what was found on his computer and what the capability of it was, and extracting this story. This is, I mean, this is out and out narrative creation out of the thin air, out of the horrific criminal minds of the people who put out the official narrative, which is the legacy dying media, the true fake news. So I mean, I just thought that'd be something to get out, because I'm quite sure not everybody's heard the narrative, or maybe even of the retraction, because the original story goes out there and creates a meme, and then even when the original perpetrator takes it back, that's not given the coverage. I mean, the media, I'm quite sure the story probably got coverage on MSNBC, CNN, God only knows. I don't watch that stuff. It's an insult to my intelligence. It's such a waste of time. But I'm quite sure they ran with that story. So even if the Washington Compost retracted it, I'm quite sure they didn't make a headline out of it. And I'm quite sure the legacy fake news media did not make as big a deal about oops as they did when they made an assertion that this was in fact a national threat. I mean, this is completely insane. But what we're seeing is the melting down and the discombobulation and the sheer panic of the globalists. And the globalists are fairly equally sprinkled throughout our government. I mean, we'll deal with the federal government, or gooberment, as I like to call it, because it's run by a bunch of goobers. When I say that, the globalist agenda is probably equally represented on both sides of the Democrat and Republican aisle. And we start to see them. I mean, obvious examples of this would be John Insane McCain and Lindsey Cupcake Graham, the odd couple. I mean, these two stick around. I mean, they're always together. And so they're obvious globalists. Anybody right now making any noise about Russia, a non-threat, is from the globalists. Russia is enemy number one to them, because probably for the last 8 years or so, President Putin, or even when he wasn't president, during some of Dmitry Medvedev's presidents, because they kind of been switching off a little bit. And Medvedev is a little bit of an Atlanticist, which isn't the best thing for Russia. But I think he's coming around. But Putin has been fighting the oligarchs, who are part of the globalization and New World Order type of government. The one that's largely operated out of the UN, where people who were not elected to office, but appointed by people we elected to office, go in there and try to run the world. And I'm really kind of glad that it looks like there might be some changes made about how that organization operates, because it does not operate in our the common person, the sovereign citizen interest. Matter of fact, they don't even believe in sovereignty. There is all kinds of made up stories about how we don't have sovereignty based on people who think that they run the world have said. And there's the imagined reality, and then there's the actual reality. Now, of course, as long as anybody buys into that kind of stuff, there is a true reality aspect to it, because reality is what we're thinking. It really is. And because also what we're thinking and what I call our psychology has everything to do with how we behave in the world. Quantum physics is a real thing. So what you're putting out into the world based on your own psychology contributes to the mass holding of patterns of an observer. In other words, you have a collective observer made up of many observers. And it's almost like a vote. I mean, it does get to break down a little bit. I mean, I really like to think when it comes to important news, when it comes to the real important news that affects you, open your door and look outside into your neighborhood. If everything seems quiet for that now, and that's the only moment you have is now, it's quiet. If nobody's shooting anybody, there's no shooting in your neighborhood. I mean, and even with the weather. So a lot of reality that we're getting, whether it's from being on the internet, watching anything, any number of or kinds of information input, and especially the absolutely poisonous mainstream media. I mean, that's a reality that usually has very little to do with what's happening outside your door. And the best way to know what's happening outside your door is open it and have a look. So it's really time to be on guard. I have a lot of sympathy for, I guess, some older Americans. I mean, my father passed away in 2008, had never been on the internet, and he seemed to be quite proud of it. He was a contrarian in many ways. We were from New York, and since the Yankees were the big deal in New York, he voted for the Mets because everybody else, he liked the Mets simply because everybody else basically supported the Yankees. He was that kind of guy. But he's not atypical of some portions of the older people. So these older people are still going to be getting their news from toxic media, and they have no other input. And when, let's say, somebody else in their family comes to them with some of the things they've learned on the internet, they've already been given this term called conspiracy theorist, that it's like a blanket they're supposed to throw over this family member that has a narrative that differs than the one that they're getting from their TV. Even when we tie into the Matrix movie and they show people in these pods, with all the tubes into them, I mean, really, to me, the pod is the fake reality, and the tube that you need to pull out is actually the TV tube. TV may have a place in the future when the people are actually creating their own programming, but as long as it's controlled by who it's controlled of, it is toxic, and it will do everything it can to create a reality that they want you to believe. They have no interest in informing you. They have an interest in forming you. I want to say at this time, let me keep an eye on the clock here, because boy, I know I can get verbose and long-winded. I hope to start doing some live broadcasts in 2017. I don't know whether it'll be on Google Hangouts. I see that YouTube has some kind of live feed type of thing. And I know when I do talks, when I've done lectures in the past, I've always done relatively short lectures. Let's say I do a 2-hour lecture. I'll do a half an hour of speaking and an hour and a half of Q&A. Because what I try to do is whet people's appetite. Give them enough information kind of strewn about that there isn't enough, and it naturally forms questions. And then I like to leave them hanging so that they ask me those questions, so I can answer in language specifically geared to the person who asked the question, what I think would be useful to them. I mean, when I'm in a live thing, I can pick up on people's energies, their auras. I can see their body language. I can hear their neurolinguistics, and it helps me to form an answer that I think will get in there. And even in certain cases where I'm trying to really inform them, if I get certain things might be triggering, I try to be a little bit careful about triggering, because once you trigger somebody, that means you wake up some kind of emotional block or emotional resistance, and then the transmission stops. So I won't probably be able to see anybody if I do these things. It's usually in a chat form, but I would like to think that, and I have a small enough audience. I only have like 850 subscribers. And of course, if you're watching and you'd like to add to the subscribers, please do. But it might be very manageable. Leave it. And with regards to this, I would probably make a short video announcing I was going to do a live feed. I have no idea what kind of pre-time, you know, like how much in advance. Is it good to do it a day in advance, a few hours in advance? I would think a day. But if you want to put anything in my comment section, please do. So yeah, that's something I'm looking forward to. That would be something that I would just do on my own. But also in 2017, I have somebody I'm going to be partnering with. We're going to have a whole different YouTube channel. We're going to be we're going to be interacting with each other, covering different stories and information. I will be on camera. He will be off camera. But we're going to have some, you know, that kind of banter that makes things lively. In many ways, he's going to help to manage me. He'll be part of the conversation, but when I get a little bit long-winded or kind of go off on tangents, he can pull me back. He was a friar at one point, so sometimes I might even refer to him as the friar. So that's something I hope we can look forward to. I know I'm looking forward to it because I do notice I have a really humble subscriber list. I mean, of the many people who do similar things to me, as me, I really don't get many subscribers. I'd like to thank all 850 of you. So important. I think what was important as a review now, what I thought was important in 2016, for me, the single most important thing that happened from a global consciousness, a point of view of something important that I called the World Summit, was what happened and is still happening at Standing Rock. Obviously, blizzards and sub-zero temperatures have created a certain hibernation of the outward appearance of that movement. But it is hibernating because it's now an organism. The Standing Rock movement is, in fact, an organism now. And so it has to, being as it's in that really harsh north environment, it has to go into hibernation. That would be the natural thing to do. That's living within nature. But once things start warming up and thawing out, it will show up again. I am a little bit curious about what the newly elected president will do with that. He's made some sounds that are not pleasing to me. I mean, overall, I like his concepts. I have not liked anything he said so far, but again, I don't know what kind of information streams he had from that. If his information streams were completely from a business standpoint, I would think that he got some fairly toxic information. I think I can't imagine he won't have somebody around him who go, you know, these people got a point here. So I kind of, that's something to look forward to. I mean, I really look forward to seeing his unfoldment. I feel, I sense, I intuit, I read a lot of promise there. And I'm just, well, I'll get a chance to test out my premonitions there. Okay, Standing Rock. Also the zombie apocalypse. Okay, zombies are people who are controlled by outside forces and are not really coming from making their own decisions and having their own opinions. Apocalypse means the unveiling. For me, a big part of the zombie apocalypse were coming out of the mouths of the people at the protests against the election of Donald Trump. I'm not saying everybody there, because if you didn't open your mouth and say something, you might have just been there because you had wanted, your candidate didn't win, so you're showing support. But for the people who did open their mouths and were challenged by people trying to get into a dialogue, have questions answered about, you know, okay, we see you're not feeling too good. Would you like to communicate with me? All they had were phrases: xenophobe, racist, patriarchy, male privilege. I mean, all they had was slogans. The reason they only had slogans is because they're programmed. Programs cannot answer questions. It's almost like when you type into a thing, all they can do is kind of put suggestions about maybe what you think or what the right answer is. There's no real dialogue there. And similarly, from these people, there was no dialogue. There was nothing more than the regurgitation of programming that they have gotten from this rotten common core or common rotten core, rotten to the core school system. I mean, these people are not learning real world skills. They're being indoctrinated terribly. And so the zombies that these schools are producing was revealed, which revealing is what apocalypse means. So that's why I'm trying to say, and a big part of this, of what happened in 2016 was the absolute seeing the zombie apocalypse. The zombie apocalypse is upon us. It has revealed itself. Now, you know, fortunately, there are remedies to this. These are, again, I'm a compassionate person. Seeing somebody so taken over by an external system that they are no longer able to think for themselves is not something for me to demean. It's something for me to feel very concerned about, not only for our common good, but for their good. It isn't happy to see somebody taken over by a system of indoctrination that is anti-human. Okay, 2016 zombie apocalypse. No, I guess that's it. To me, the two outstanding things were Standing Rock and the zombie apocalypse. And of course, the zombies of the media. I mean, we closed 2016 out. One of the last news stories was that Russians tried to hack into and bring down our energy system. A complete, total piece of bullshit lie. No semblance, no connection, no matter how tenuous can be made that this was a threat. I just want to make that clear. All right, so how am I doing on time? Okay. Things I like to think are going to be developing more and more in 2017, going ahead. Something called the new chronology. The new chronology is something, by the way, my eye has been tearing. I have to do a liver cleanse apparently because this is the gallbladder meridian here. So excuse me while I wipe my nose. The new chronology. The new chronology is something. What's called the new chronology is because the chronology that we have inherited, the history we have inherited, is not based on a lot of reality, and even the timeline of it is incorrect. Isaac Newton, in his last book he was writing or finished writing just before he died, was questioning the timing and the history that he was reading very close to the time that it changed. Basically, I guess it kind of started around the Reformation, and then the Gutenberg press was the way that the then emerging New World Order was able to plant its ideas, including timelines, histories, when civilizations were, how far in the past they were or not. They kind of placed them along a timeline. And people who were closer to when that timeline changed, like Isaac Newton, said something is seriously wrong here. And somebody else had also noticed, and apparently a modern observation, and I don't remember all the names, but the person who kind of has written 7 volumes of books is called Anatoly Fomenko. And I think it's called History, Fact, or Fiction is the name of his series. And from what I know of, according to Cara St. Louis, who is also, this is something that she's pursuing very much, all thanks to her. But it was something I picked up early on in 2016 because this wonderful lady, Sylvia Ivanova, and she has her own YouTube channel, one word, New Earth. And if you're going to watch these New Earth, start with number 1, because this is a series of videos that starts out it's a very responsibly done video series, and it starts like a book. And if you don't read the first chapter and jump ahead because this looks more interesting, you will not really benefit from it. You'll probably get confused, and the point being made might be lost. It starts out calling the Survivor series. And basically what it is the survivors of a true elite. They were elite because of their wisdom. They were elite because of their capabilities, surviving the last cataclysm, and how they brought their knowledge and even their genetics to some of the more primitive people. A case in point, if you go into the Amazon today, you will find people that live in the forest very removed. At one point, a lot of the world was like that. And this group, the survivors, went into these areas little by little and brought them to technology and agriculture, including how naturally to genetically modified food and animals. That's where we get domestic animals from. It's a form of quote unquote knowledge. And so she chronicles it, and in it she mentions Anatoly Fomenko. She covers how during the Reformation period, the formation of the Gregorian calendar and the invention of the Gutenberg press, and even the words of some of the monks who did the translations didn't say that they were honestly recopying what they found. They said they were fixing history, and indeed they did fix it, such as the fix is in. So Anatoly Fomenko, there was a period where they found out that based on the normal lunar cycle, lunar cycles, but basically eclipses, there was a period, I don't know how many 100 years, where it seemed like the moon was spinning, and nobody could explain why the moon went into this suddenly majorly accelerated orbit that created eclipses far more in frequency than should have been the case. I mean, from an astrophysics point of view, it was that the moon, for a period of time, maybe for a couple hundred years, spun much, much faster than it ever had, and then settled back into its old orbit. And from a true astrophysical point of view, there was no explanation for it. It didn't even make sense. Anatoly Fomenko, who was also a mathematician and a statistician, he put the moon back into its normal orbit, and then he realized that the years shortened. So some cases in point is where, let's say, the Roman Empire was put back 2,000 years ago. It might have been 1,000 years ago. Ancient Egypt, the high light might have been, like 2,500 years ago, 3,500 years ago. It might have been 2,000 years ago. I mean, these are just arbitrary things, but basically our historical timeline is shorter. Apparently, much of this was done for the royals to make it look like they had these really long lines, with the divine right of kings, which is an Anunnaki concept. And I think we want to be a lot less Anunnaki friendly in the future, as far as the concepts and like what they tell us. Largely because they have been allowed to exist. Zecharia Sitchin was allowed to publish those books. The material from the Gnostics, speaking of the divine feminine of Sophia, the Cathars in Languedoc or southwestern region of France that held this knowledge. Women were held in equanimity with men. They were stamped out to a man, woman, and child, and their books were burned on the pyres they burned the people in. So whatever that ancient information was considered so unacceptable, so deadly to the system that was promoted, that it was wiped out. All right. So then in 1945, the Nag Hammadi codices came out, but they were more modern. They were kind of giving some of the ancient information, but it was tied in more with Jesus. So they're not seen as threatening. It's the stuff that kind of happened, the knowledge that was there before Jesus, how Jesus got included into that knowledge and what it all meant. Again, wiped out of people and wiped out all of their information. But the Anunnaki stuff is allowed to float around because it feeds into the parasitic concept. It feeds into the concept of the divine right of kings and queens and monarchy. All right. It gives anybody claiming to be of these bloodlines some kind of we're entitled. God gave it to us. All right. That's how I feel about that. So anyway, we want to be, I'm not saying that there is not some real truth to what's revealed in there. But again, there's a narrative, there's a social engineering narrative in those works that shine a light on the monarchies that to me is undeserved, because all we have to do is let's look at the fruit of monarchies throughout history. And overall, it's nothing more than using the populace, they have not benefited. Now with the Survivor series, these other ones who I think are more a part of the history that was wiped out, took it upon themselves to go into primitive areas and enrich the people, including sharing of their genetic material. I mean, generally, when you look at the historical monarchies, they hoard their genetic material. Now, fortunately for us, humans are horny. So there was plenty of people of noble blood who saw, just like the Watchers, they saw the daughters of men, saw they were comely, had a quick one with them. Those women would go back, have children, and whatever possible genetics they had that were superior got spread around. It's been a long time since then, and of course we can, not everybody apparently got a dose of that, but enough of us have, and those of us who do have the dose, and see the ones who don't have, it's fine. We want to work with them. We don't want to lord over them with superior genetics. We are one. We're all one in God, and we have to approach each other with lots and lots of love and sharing. All right, I'm gonna go away. So the new chronology. Please watch New Earth, and I guess in the future, Kara St. Louis will be bringing more of this. This is going to be something I also want to, because I fell into Sylvie Ivanova over a year ago, or about a year ago, and it's really important to almost, and in many ways, freeing yourself up from a timeline. But basically, history in there's a lot of fake news in history. Okay, the other thing I think we want to look, we're going to be looking forward to in 2017 is breakaway civilization. Now, in one ways, there is the breakaway civilization of those who have all this high technology, and represent a form of the elite. Now, going back into the late 1800s, apparently they had some kind of technologies that allowed people to fly in crafts that worked a little bit on the same kind of similar principles of anti-gravity. And these people, these elite weren't bankers and CEOs and stuff. These were engineers and anthropologists. I mean, these were actually people who could, through their knowledge, enrich anybody they came in contact with, all right? As opposed to the elite that only look to contact people so they can vacuum some money out of you, all right? The parasites. And that's what Sylvie does. There's the survivors and there's the parasites. And in many ways, I think a lot of the elite parasites are in fact the demon-possessed or archon-influenced parts of whatever those people who had the technology, and the survivors have largely been wiped out as far as a movement, which is why the world is currently in such a crappy state. But another thing they're hiding in the history is some of these survivors might have been around even 100 or 2 years ago. And again, they're trying to, through this fake narrative, they keep on burying it. This is why some of the sites that get found, like Göbekli Tepe and other ones that completely shed new lights on things, are ignored because it would hurt the false narrative of history. Okay, now one of the big things that I think is going to be coming out in 2017 is Antarctica. Something was found down there. And I just want, I should just mention Cliff High. WebBots, he's got a bunch of them out right now. I have his latest Alta report that was gifted to me by somebody who actually bought it for me and gave it to me. Excuse me. After I read it, I'll probably have a lot more to say. And there's quite a bit about Antarctica in that report that I know of. And the languaging, the way that Cliff does his things, the languaging around that is that there is a massive resource, precious technology. So Antarctica is going to be huge in 2017, I believe. New paradigm production is going to be a big part, at least, of my life in 2017. And also, I have a feeling that the elite are going to realize that one of their weak points in who they are is the growing knowledge of how many of them are pedophiles. So I think they're going to start. I think we're going to find out more about them, and the ones who haven't really done that, or going, or at least some of the lower level pedophiles, will be hung out to make it look like they're cleaning up. Just like, you know, the Catholic Church occasionally hangs out some pedophiles to make us think that it's no longer a part of them. I think pedophilia and how rampant it is amongst the psychopathic elite. How rampant. I mean, almost like you almost have to be a pedophile be a pedophile to join a club. I think that's going to start coming out. And unless I mean, whether or not it's going to make the mainstream media, I don't know. But, you know, I mean, obviously not unless they're forced to. And usually once things break out at the, like, you know, like let's say Alex Jones and InfoWars. I mean, he reaches a lot of people. Once that kind of starts cracking, they have to respond to it some way. And because they'll be in panic mode, they won't be able to respond to it cogently or, you know, coherently. All right. Okay, make it happen in 2017. Hemp. We have to have hemp. We have to. You have to get involved. You want the ability to grow hemp everywhere. It's a technology that's been held down largely by, you know, Hearst held it down because he had paper mills and he wanted to print his. He wanted to use his pulp mills that would make him lots and lots of money, as opposed to hemp paper, which lasts, I don't know, like 6 times longer than paper, hemp, regular paper. Okay, make it happen in 2017. Start educating yourself. We have to stop ignorance. Ignorance is what's holding us back. Okay? And live in the moment. We need to start realizing all our power is now. Of course, we're going to have these futures and past as part in our purview, but we really need to be more in the moment. Especially when you're being stressed out about something that might happen in the future, come back in a moment, check in with yourself and go, I'm really okay right now. Maybe I could spare myself some cortisol. That's produced when you're stressed out. And learn to recognize psychopaths as best as you can. Watch their eyes. See how they exhibit emotion or don't. See if it's almost too emotional for a given thing. Look for acting. If you see acting, generally believe it or not, acting is a psychopathic behavior. One of the things that sold me on Donald Trump, especially in the last days, I saw somebody speaking. I saw somebody communicating, not a bit of acting. And that was huge to me. And in the long term, don't buy into the global warming. If anything, but what's showing up, especially in Cliff High's web bots, and from anybody who's kind of watched things, we're probably heading more in for an ice age than anything else. But that's not until like in the mid 2020s. So be here now. No, I'm just throwing it out there. That's the long term. So okay, that's gonna wrap up my my Mystic Review preview of 2016 and 2017. Please, I'm on Minds.com as ModWiz, and Minds is happening, man. And I have stopped posting on Facebook. My last post on Facebook was, I'm not posting in here anymore. Let your shareholders eat that. I use the messaging system, but I'm not even gonna use Facebook as a platform. Fuck it. All right, Minds.com. That's where I'm finding all the stuff I want to read, the various posts. It's great. There is no censorship, even of words. I mean, sometimes I wish people would police themselves a little better, but I'd rather hear a few more fucks and shits in people's written language where it's not necessary than having any kind of censorship. I'm an adult. I can handle it. All right. I love you all. Happy New Year, 2017. See you next time. And please like or subscribe. I really could use a few more subscribers if you like what we're doing, but I will be doing new things coming in 2017. So maybe they'll be better directed and I'll find more people who like it. Bye.